My name is Varan, Karunanantham, co-founder of iConnect Mortgages. I'm here with Adam from Sharp Appraisal. Adam, introduce yourself.
Perfect. Varan, first off, thank you for having Sharp Appraisal here. My name is Adam. I'm an appraiser for Sharp Appraisal. I've been appraising now with the company for 5 years. I am just completing my CRA designation, which is essentially your master's in appraising.
Okay.
And taking the next step as an appraiser, and hopefully one day get my AACI.
Perfect. Adam, I have a very interesting question to you. Appraisal is pretty much like one of the lifeline where the deal happens or deal doesn't happen. So can you walk me through what's the worst appraisal you've seen in the last 12 to 18 months? And you'll be like, you know what? I feel bad for this borrower.
There are a couple of scenarios. I'll give you two stories.
Okay.
I'll give you the first one where the value was actually close, but it hurt us to put the borrower through what he did. It was going into power of sale. It was a condo that they needed $680,000 to make their deal. That was the number. There was a unit that sold with parking a week or two before, same square footage, higher floor level, better condition that sold at $640,000. There was another sale about 4 weeks before, was at the $630,000, $640,000. We were about $40,000 away from making this guy keep his house. We couldn't get there.
That hurts, eh?
That one really hurt for us because we're close, but there's just no data at all
support it,
to support anything higher. And we really felt for that individual. What we're seeing right now, Varan, and I'm sure you guys see it all the time. New build.
We all see it together sometimes.
We all see it together, exactly. New build constructions have been taking a beating. West Gwillimbury, there were ones that sticks out where we were, I think, $450,000 short of the purchase price. And I think the buyer decided to walk away from his, it might have been $200,000 or $250,000 deposit, but he just couldn't come up with the funds to close, right? And, we're seeing that a lot right now in pre-construction condos downtown.
Oh, in downtown condos too, eh? So when are these condos built at? I'm like, is it like early 2019, 2020?
2019, 2020, that's when they started selling, and they're just kind of coming now to life, and closing time is around the corner for them. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've all heard the same story. COVID happened, building costs went up, right? Costs went up for price per square foot on condos, cost for labor, and borrowers bought on that future potential. Yeah. And now what we're seeing, that units that were being bought pre-construction at $1,400 or $1,450, $1,500 a square foot are now going for $1,100, $1,150.
That's a big drop.
Big drop, right? I did a studio apartment, 350 square feet, that they bought for $660,000, I think it was. So if you do the math on that, $1,900 a square foot for a small condo
doesn't make sense.
It's not making sense in today's market.
So there's always a misconception. Like when I tell the clients I'm going to order an appraisal, they're like, oh, can they come in like about a week later because we need to clean the house, we need to paint the house, we want to vacuum the house. Like,
yeah.
Does it really matter when you do the report? Like, it's just I know the answer, but I just want to make sure.
It doesn't. And I reassure your clients, everyone's clients all the time. What we're looking for in the report or in the inspection, I should say, is structural damage. We're looking for mold, mildew, water damage, holes in the wall, things like that, right? More structural than cleaning up. I did a condo that was one of the dirtiest condominiums I've seen, and I'm talking Q-tips on the floor, half-eaten food on the floor, but the actual structure of the unit
is perfect.
It was fine. They had upgraded countertops, upgraded bathrooms. As an appraiser, you have to ask yourself, if you're a good appraiser, how can I see past that? If I hired a cleaning lady right now, that would cost me $200 or $250 to get, right? That's not going to impact my value. Yeah. So, no, the answer is no. It does not make a big difference.
So what you're saying is if you need a report done, don't wait on clean the house. Just call you guys, book the appointment, and get it going.
Book the appointment. And one more addition to that, Varan. Many clients, what their standard of dirty, right, is not dirty. They just had a rough week with, kids' toys lying around, clutter. Not a big deal.
So that's one of the reasons a lot of time the appraisals get delayed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Adam, can you kind of walk me through, like, there's a lot of upgrades get done to the house, right? Some of them are cosmetic, like they said, I put the crown molding on, I put this on. Like, what really brings value to the property?
Great question. I get this all the time. The short answer is it sometimes depends on buyer preferences. Me and you may have different priorities in a house, right? I may want a finished basement, and that is the be-all, end-all for me. You may want a pool and a deck, okay? There was a poll, I should say, with all appraisers across Canada. The Appraisal Institute of Canada was a couple years ago, and what they found was the biggest payback dollar for dollar on your renovations are going to come in two places. The first is the kitchens. So 75 to about 100% of your dollar for dollar you'll return on your investment in your kitchens.
Kitchen? Okay.
And that makes sense, right?
And also make your spouse happy as well. Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And the other one is bathrooms. Bathrooms get, I think the percentage was 60 to 80% dollar for dollar, right? Then there's finished basements will add value. Separate entrance, of course, right? You get the rental potential, the rental income. Pools fluctuate. During COVID, pools were worth, right? They were worth so much money because no one could leave their house. Now you may not see that same dollar for dollar, right? But I would say the two biggest one, if you're going to invest in your home, bathrooms and kitchens.
And how about the landscaping?
Landscaping is also very important. Curb appeal is, like anyone, Brent, first impressions. I walk into a house or I'm driving by it. You want to see landscaping. You want to see, a nice entrance to your home. You're right. Very underrated, part and plays a big part in the overall perception of a house.
Okay. More than a cosmetic inside the house.
Yeah.
Adam, so you work with the different lenders and we come to you to get the appraisal done from many lenders.
Yep.
So can you kind of walk us through or walk the audience through how is the comparable works? Like, what do you look at the comparable? Like some lenders have a different criteria versus other lenders. Like, for example, Home Trust have a different criteria than Equitable Bank or
right.
Scotiabank. So can you kind of walk it through on a very standard how the comparable works?
Sure. So what I find across what's universal or seems to be universal across all of the alternative lenders that we deal with is what we call at Sharp Appraisal the 90-90 rule.
Okay.
Two criteria to that. One, has your comparable sat on the market for over 90 days? Okay. This is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
If you're an agent, if you're a realtor, if you're an appraiser, you have to ask the question, why? If an average exposure time for a property to sell is usually between 0 to 45 days, right? Yeah. They give us about 90-day window. If it sat for 90 days, why didn't it sell?
So there's a problem.
There's a problem. And sometimes, Varan, it's as simple as calling the realtor and saying, Mr. Realtor, explain to me what happened. What was your biggest challenges? And they might say, I had a tenant in there. The tenant was denying us access. We weren't able to get the showings that we wanted, right?
So you consider those things?
Absolutely. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to include a comparable like that. You just need to make sure as an appraiser you're explaining why you're including it, right? And I'll include that in my report. Comparable 3 sold over 90 days. I spoke to the realtor, yada, yada, yada. It is considered a reliable sale, right? That's the first one. The second one is, has it sold within 90 days, all right? We've seen in the last couple of years that we've been doing business, we've seen these markets go up and down quick in 1 month time, 2 months time, right? It's been very chaotic, okay? If we are including a sale that is past 90 days, right? And sometimes we have to as appraisers. Sometimes there's just no recent activity in the area. Yeah. We have to explain or maybe make a time adjustment to account for, those, the time difference, I should say, right? So those are the two criteria that I find that seem to be universal no matter what.
No matter which lender.
If we get a call, it's usually, something about that. And then in terms of, the other guidelines, it's more so, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but each lender has their type of book of business where they feel comfortable lending. Some lenders won't touch rural properties, right? If it's a house plus 5, they won't consider, most lenders won't consider the added acreages, right? If it's on if it's on septic, some lenders say right away, I won't touch it.
They don't even lend on it.
They won't lend it, right? So that's more on their, I guess, preferences, but doesn't necessarily impact the appraisal perspective because our analysis is based on, what we're seeing in that pocket in the short term.
Do they look at how far of a kilometers wise or a distance wise you can look at compare the property to?
Yes, absolutely. And that is such a big part because
Yeah, that's a part always get tricky, right? Because when the value comes in, realtor or the client calls and say, hey, like there's a house sold at this property at this area, but then I think you guys have a restriction from each lenders how far of a distance you can use a comparability.
Not necessarily the distance, because an example, again, rural properties. You won't find recent rural properties within 90 days. Very, very lucky if you do, right? So for you to complete a full analysis, you're going to have to go a little further into different TREP communities, 3 kilometers away, 4 kilometers away. I've done, believe it or not, condos in the West End, W4, W5 area, where there's just no supply for new buildings.
Yeah.
And I can't compare a 50-year-old building to a new building.
Because there's a completely different infrastructure, different.
You got it,
Yeah.
right? So what do I have to do as an appraiser? I have to find neighboring areas, and I need to figure out if there is a percentage difference in that area. Does that location sell at superior numbers? Is it stable? Is it a worse area? And you need to adjust for that in your report.
So how do you do that?
Sure. So when we're doing an appraisal, right, we want to compare apples to apples. We will not compare a bungalow to a 2-story house. They're completely different properties, right? The criteria that we want are, 1, that they're the same design style, similar age, and 2, that the land is the same frontage or at least similar frontage, similar depth. If we can find those 2 main criteria, our comparables are going to be in good shape. Downtown Toronto, where I specialize in, there will be a huge difference between a 20-foot lot and a 25-foot lot. Huge difference.
Maybe
right?
not in the suburbs, but in downtown areas.
Exactly, right? So what you're trying to figure out is, can I find comparables that are similar in square footage, similar in lot size, similar in style, and then you start adjusting for the other imperfections in the home. If you have upgraded windows, upgraded flooring, upgraded bathrooms, upgraded kitchen, that needs to be accounted for in the report, right? And that's where we start making our, adjustments either upwards or downwards.
Got it.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask, Adam, is maybe an information piece for mortgage brokers or real estate agents. How is the appraisal or appraisal institution looking at the basement rental income? That's a hot topic.
Great question. I'm glad you brought that up. The Appraisal Institute of Canada about a year ago mentioned that if it's not a legal basement, meaning that if it doesn't have permits from the city, you cannot comment on the market rental income, right? So essentially, to meet that criteria, you need to have a separate entrance, a kitchen or a cooking area, a bathroom, and there are certain dimensions for making sure they're fireproofed and things like that, right? That only the city can permit. Okay, if it is not legally permitted, then in theory, it should not be legally rented, right? So that has put a lot of challenges for mortgage agents because, again, if we look downtown, look at Brampton, look in a lot of areas where, everywhere where rental income in the basement is so important and it's very normal to have a basement apartment, they can no longer use that for their mortgage application for that rental income. And that's where it's been very tricky.
But it's very tricky because some lenders are okay. They don't need a retrofit basement. They just want to make sure it's a self-contained basement. That means it has separate entrance, washroom, and a kitchen.
So from the lender perspective, we found that they don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, it's just
the appraisal. Yeah, the appraisal. We're governed by the Appraisal Institute of Canada. They're the ones that have permitted.
So how do you work around it?
You can't.
Okay.
You can't. Yeah. Okay. You can't.
Adam, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Do you want to share how they can get hold of Sharp Appraisal?
Absolutely. My phone is always open, 416-829-1729. You can email me at Adam@Sharp Appraisal. I do want to take one moment and just say we've been dealing with iConnect for years now, 3 or 4 years, I think, since we've started our working partnership. These guys are 2 of the best in the business, top-notch guys, and we cannot say higher words for these guys. So thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Awesome.